Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. We are here to talk about the Salem Council Ward redistricting. And my name is Leslie Hegewald. I'm the GIS coordinator for the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. And this is the third time I've done this. We did this also following the 2000 and 2010 censuses. This time is a little bit different because we have much less time than we've had in the past. And so I'm really happy to actually be to this point this soon, because we were really worried it might run over into 2022. And the county clerks would not be happy if that happened. So, just a brief history. Every 10 years this happens in order to rebalance the population between the council wards to ensure equal representation. And the process is done in GIS software, which is software that's designed for mapping and geographic data analysis. Okay. So the process is driven by two things mainly. One is the data, which comes from the U.S. Census Bureau from the 2020 decennial census, from the Public Law 94-171 redistricting file. And this is the same data that the states use for legislative, Senate, and congressional redistricting, which you probably heard about taking place earlier this year. It's a very limited file. It contains only total population, population by race and ethnicity, and population by race and ethnicity for people aged 18 and over. And it's tabulated at the census block level, which are the smallest unit of geography for which they tabulate data. You might be familiar with other census geographies, such as census blocks, block groups, or census tracts. And so this little graphic just shows how they nest into one another. And then the census tracts nest into counties. So the second thing that drives this process is the criteria, which comes from the Secretary of State in the form of a directive. And that was issued on September 9th of this year. We couldn't actually start redistricting at that point because the state was not done with their redistricting yet. So we had to wait until they accepted their legislative boundaries on the 27th. So we are really crunched for time. So the criteria are the rules that we have to follow when we're redefining the boundaries. And they include things like being contiguous, being of equal population, relatively speaking, not dividing communities of common interest, being connected by transportation links. And for the population requirement, since the census block geography kind of presents some limitations, we can't often get the population to balance exactly in all of the wards. And so we shoot for 5% plus or minus of the target population. And I'll talk about that again in a minute. We also considered some additional things, and these things were identified following interviews that I did with each council member just to get their thoughts and ideas, priorities. And those include things like following neighborhood association boundaries where possible, minimizing the number of small sections of neighborhood associations in the wards, just because the council members try to get to all of those meetings and it can be hard for them to manage so many meetings. Using natural boundaries that make sense on the ground. And there were some suggestions that pertain to specific local areas that they suggested. So this is the current city council wards. The first step of this process was to do an analysis of the current wards. And you can see here in black, these are the population thresholds that are over the target population. These are the ones that are under the red ones. So the target population is calculated by taking the total city population, which is 175,535, and dividing that by 8 wards. And we get a target population of 21,942. So the goal is to balance the population within 5% of that number. And as you can see, and to no one's surprise, Ward 8 is the most over the target population because West Salem has continued to be the fastest growing area of the city. Ward 4 also is over by just over 11% above the target. 6 and 2 are pretty significantly under that target population. 1 is just slightly under. 5, 3, and 7 are okay. But the issue is that when you have to shift population in adjacent wards, often you're going to have to change those wards as well, just in order to balance things. It kind of has a ripple effect when you start moving things around. So we developed 3 redistricting alternatives, and each one had a little bit different approach to these. The first alternative is what we're calling the minimal change alternative. And this one was created using the current boundaries and just making as minimal change as possible to get the ward populations into balance with one another. Alternative 2 is the minimal change, but we've also tried to align the boundaries with neighborhood association boundaries as much as possible. And alternative 3 follows the neighborhood association boundaries as much as possible, but we've also designed the outer wards, or kind of on the outer edge of the city, to be able to accommodate future population growth. So we've tried to get the numbers a little bit under the target where we can. So this is alternative 1, and you can see that all of the populations are within the 5% that we're shooting for. This is, again, is the minimal change option. So there's really only a few changed areas here. Here in West Salem, we are having to shift more of Ward 1 into West Salem to balance that population and bring the population of Ward 8 down a bit. So we've brought it in further along the Edgewater district and going over into the Capitol Manor area. We're moving a small piece of Ward 5 into Ward 6 to balance its population. In Ward 2, it's taking a little bit of area from Ward 1, and that's State Street is the boundary there. Down here in Ward 7, it's given a little bit of this area to Ward 3 to balance that population, and then Ward 4, we're transferring the area west of Liberty to Ward 7. And then this is the alternative 1 boundaries with the neighborhood association boundaries. And we really tried to follow the boundaries where we could. It's just really hard to do that with all of the other considerations that we have to deal with. So alternative 2, again, is the minimal change and aligning better to the neighborhood association boundaries. It's similar in bringing Ward 1 into West Salem. It's similar to the last alternative. It's just bringing a little bit more of that area in. This area also moves a piece of Ward 5 into Ward 6, and additionally brings a little piece of Ward 2 into 6 to better balance it. We're seeing the same area here and here. And then the other big change in this one, there's 2 of them really, and that would be this area of Minto Brown Island Park, which is currently in Ward 7, is being moved into Ward 1. So that's everything that's north of River Road South. And then over here on the east, we are taking this area that's north of Highway 22 and east of I-5 and moving it from Ward 3 into Ward 2. And then this is that alternative with the neighborhood association boundaries. So Ward 3 is the minimal change with neighborhood association alignment and also allowing for future growth in these outer wards where the population is expected to grow faster than the rest of the city. We've used a different expansion into West Salem for Ward 1, where we're not going further along into the Capitol Manor area, but kind of just aligning it with where the boundary already is and then taking some of this up on the north. There's an area in the northwest corner of Ward 4 that is being moved into Ward 7. And then again, in this alternative, this same section that's north of Highway 22 is still moving from 3 into 2. And here's that alternative with the neighborhood boundaries. So we also did an analysis of the race and ethnic breakdown of the proposed wards. This is required by the Secretary of State. One of the criteria states that no district shall be drawn for the purpose of diluting the voting strength of any language or ethnic minority group. And so we wanted to make sure that we don't either intentionally or unintentionally divide any of those communities of common interests with regard to race, ethnicity, or language spoken. And citywide, non-white and Hispanic people comprise 36.5% of the population. So this is the current ward boundaries with the distribution of non-white and Hispanic population. The darker colors indicate more people. So you can see that on the east side of Salem, there's the highest concentration of non-white and Hispanic people, and this has been true in the past as well. Wards 2, 5, and 6 are the wards that exceed the city average for non-white and Hispanic population with, I don't know if you can see that table, with Ward 2 being at 37.7%, Ward 5 is at 58.7%, and 6 is 59.6% of the population. So this is alternative 1 with that race breakdown. And since we didn't really change a lot from the current boundaries, there's really not a lot of impact for this alternative. And you can see the results here in this table. So this is the current wards here and the alternative 1. And these percentages are changing very, very slightly. I mean, it's fraction of a percent. So there's really no impact or very little impact with this alternative. Alternative 2, which is that minimal change plus aligning to neighborhood boundaries. This one, we do have a couple of significant changes here, and that mainly has to do with this area being moved from Ward 3 into Ward 2. So you can see that impact here. So moving that area from 3 to 2 causes the percentage of non-white and Hispanic population in Ward 3 to drop from 32% to just over 28%. So it's becoming a little bit less diverse. And again, that's due to moving that area north of Highway 22. Alternative 3, we're kind of seeing similar results there, mostly due to this area being moved from Ward 3 into Ward 2. And here's that table. So this one, there is a difference of exactly 4%. So it's going from 32% to 28% of the population that is non-white or Hispanic. So in the bottom line is that with alternative 1, there's really no impact to be seen. Alternatives 2 and 3, Ward 3 is becoming slightly less diverse, but in the end, Wards 2, 5, and 6 are still remaining above the city average for non-white and Hispanic population. So that's really not changing. So the city would really like to hear comments from the public on these alternatives and the processes, and there are a few different ways that can be submitted. An email can be sent to planningcomments@cityofsalem.net. If you go to this link on the city's website, you can see the interactive map with a comment feature, and you can find out information about the virtual open houses, of which this is one, and there is another one tomorrow at noon. And there will be a public hearing scheduled on November 22nd, and I'm assuming that there will be more information about that on the city's website. So now I would like to do a short demonstration of the interactive map that we created for the redistricting project. I can get my browser to open. So if you go to this link on the city's website and click on this link, it will open the interactive map. And so, like probably a lot of mapping applications that you've worked with, there's navigation tools where you can zoom and pan. Up here, if you click on this information link, there are instructions for how to use this site, pretty detailed. You can, this is the legend where you can see what everything is, and the layer list will allow you to turn layers on and off. You want to see the neighborhood boundaries, you can click those on, or the house districts. And you can toggle the alternatives off and on. You can also click on the map to get information in a pop-up. So this is showing the census block and its population. And then you just arrow through the results to see what other results there are. So this is the current wards and its population and the alternative one. There's also an option that you can draw on the map. There's some drawing tools. So if you wanted to make a sketch on the map and send it to the city with your feedback, you could do that. This allows you to export to a PDF or an image file. And then you can also, there's a select tool where you can select the blocks. You can select by a point, a rectangle, or a polygon. So if you just kind of wanted to do some what ifs and say, well, what happens if I move this area back to Ward 2? You can open the table, go to the blocks. Under options, you can show this just the selected records. And then by clicking on the population header and statistics, you get a statistics box and it'll tell you the sum of the population in those blocks. So, something fun for power users. So that is all I had. And we can take questions now if people all have them. Do we have any questions, Lisa?
There are no questions in the chat, but since we only have a few people here, if you have a question, feel free to unmute and let us know. We'll be happy to answer them. Yep, and as Shelby put in the chat, you can also just send comments in on the map and attend the public hearing.
Oh, that's what I forgot to show was the comment map. Let me share my screen again. I knew I was forgetting.
I was mesmerized by you on that map and drawing and doing the tables. I forgot all about the comment map. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let me get back to my, sorry. Got to get out of this PowerPoint first. Keep changing. Okay. Oh, good. So this is still open. So let me clear this and then get back out here. So yes, so this is one of the most important things about this map is that there is a comment feature, and at the top of the screen there are 3 links for each alternative's comment map. So you just click on the link and it'll open up the comment map for that alternative. There's some little instructions there. And so you have a map, and then on the sidebar, so you can either click on the map or you can click a ward number in the sidebar here. And it will open up and it'll give you some information about this. This is Ward 1, so it gives you the population and the deviation information. And you can hit this comment box and a form will pop up and you can just fill out that form and submit your comment. And so you can see that that one, there's been some comments left already. We've gotten a few comments, not a lot, but so that is available for all of the alternatives and similar map. I mean, basically the same map interface for each one. So that is one way that you can leave your feedback on these alternatives is by doing that. No questions yet?
I'm going to drop a link in the chat to the council staff report from yesterday if anybody's interested in that, because we did compile the comments together as an attachment that we've received so far. So if, sometimes people are just interested to see what other people said. So you don't have to click through all the different maps. And we got emails as well. So I'll drop a link to that in the chat. And yeah, we're still obviously taking comments, questions, suggestions now through November 22nd. The public hearing, there'll be a chance to testify at the public hearing as well.
And so that'll be at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, City Council at 6 o'clock. If you do want to testify on Zoom, it's a Zoom meeting. You would need to sign up that day in advance between 8 and 2 on the city's website, or you can send me an email. I'm on that. My contact's on the project webpage if you're having trouble finding that, and I can help you get signed up. Or you can just send in emails. Any emails that are sent in, any comments on the map, etc., we'll compile and give to the council in their staff report, so they will get those comments as well. Well, I don't see any questions. So we do want to thank the folks that came. Leslie and Shelby and I will hang out here probably for the next half hour in case people pop on later. But if you've got all the information you wanted, feel free to jump off as well.
Actually, there is one other thing I could explain really quickly.
Perfect.
I'll share my screen again. And that is, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the block geography that we have to use for this process. And so these gray lines that you see on the screen, these are actually the block boundaries. They're not roads. They sometimes follow roads. But this is what presents a challenge sometimes. And if you see some boundaries that kind of look a little odd and don't make a lot of sense, that's probably why. And this would be a good example to show here where this area is being moved from Ward 7 into Ward 2. We got at least one comment that said, this looks very strange, this chopped up area. And the reason for that is that if you can see this block here, it's very large, it's very spread out and oddly shaped. And we have to take those blocks as they are. We can't split them. So that can really challenge us in creating boundaries that make sense. And because we did have some suggestions from the council about moving this area into Ward 2, this was really the only way to do it that made any sense. Because this area, this is where the cemetery is, it just would have been even an odder boundary if we had moved that one as well. So, but so you can see by clicking here, and you can just see elsewhere in the city, you just get some really strange, gosh, there's one up here somewhere that, yeah, some of them just kind of wander all over the place and make it difficult. So, especially in West Salem. So.
Great. Thanks, Leslie. So I did go ahead and drop that link to the staff report in the chat. So feel free to check that out. And yeah, I can answer any questions. Otherwise, we'll just hang out here. And if you got what you wanted, feel free to leave. Thank you. Turn on the camera. Bye, Sylvia. Thanks for coming. Leslie, maybe could you share your presentation again and just leave it on the first slide? So that will be on the screen on YouTube.
Yeah.
If anybody comes, they'll know at least for a split second that they're in the right place.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. How's that? Can you see that okay?
Yeah, it's on presentation mode though.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. There, how's that?
It's in the part where you can see your notes still.
Oh, Yeah, let me see. Sorry.
This part always messes me up when I
Yeah.
show the presentation number. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. It's weird because I can't see the Zoom controls anymore on my second screen.
Yeah, I think they go away and they're like kind of in the top of whatever screen you're sharing. It's like a little tiny bar that's like, here are the
Yeah,
tools.
that's there.
Oh.
But before, when I was doing the presentation, the little windows of the people were on my second screen, and that's not there anymore.
Oh.
I guess that's fine. So you'll just have to let me know if someone else joins and if I should start my presentation.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Great.